What's up, folks? I'm JC Owens. This is Rock My World, episode 14, the cartoon Conjob. Now, why do I call it that? Well, in 1983, it became legal to propagandize us directly through our programming like cartoons, Sesame Street, etc. As many of you saw here during the COVID era, Sesame Street was a big pusher of things like the Big Pharma Clot Shot and others, right? Like other aspects of the agenda, I should say, right? All right. That began technically in 1983, right as my generation was being born. We come up and get plopped in front of the TV, and what does the TV show us? Well, it shows us things like Inspector Gadget, which pushes transhumanism. It shows us things like Captain Planet, which pushes climate change propaganda. It shows us G.I. Joe, which gets us prepared for the global war on terror. It's not a coincidence that all these things got pushed to the forefront, right around the time we start coming up. They knew that they were going to pull this globalist stunt and the push for one world government and a digital ID and 24-hour a day, 365 day a year AI surveillance, predictive policing, cyborgs, people walking around with chips in their head and chips in their hands and, robotic hearts and all this. They knew that all of this was coming. They knew that AI was coming. They knew that robots were coming. This is why we got inundated with all this stuff. Reagan went in, and in 1983, he made it legal for corporations to basically dump any kind of propaganda they wanted. Of course, our ancestors allowed it to happen. Our great-grandparents, grandparents, parents, they all entered into the Faustian bargain with the government and said, well, as long as you let us propagandize them with the kind of propaganda that we like, then it's okay. Of course, the government went along with this, and at first they were really careful about the kinds of things they exposed you to, but then they started slipping it in, didn't they? Like they always do. Well, now, you have shows that promote all this stuff, right? You have Japanese anime, which, of course, after World War II, we allowed our government to propagandize them from cradle to grave, and it's been going on ever since. Look at Japanese anime. Why do you think so much of Japanese anime is centered around cyborgs and transhumanism and a one world government, right? From titles like Gundam to Robotech and others. You see all these ideas being pushed all the time, all the time. The Japanese know that there's a push for a one world government. They're fully aware. It's because each country, each region, has its own culture, and because of that, they know that they have to tailor their propaganda very specifically. Right? It's not until recently that everything started coming together to become one homogenized thing, right? And yet the adults of the day weren't completely free of it. I mean, you look at Star Trek. Star Trek, Spock goes, is all about the live long and prosper. Well, live long and prosper is only one half of the Kabbalah, triangle of manifestation, right? It's only one half of that. I'm sure somebody will clip that one day and say, oh, he's Illuminati. It's well, I used to be a Mason. I used to be Card of the Knights Templar. Not anymore. That's why I know this stuff. But, it's not really going to do you much good to clip it. But you can if you want to. Anyway, the fact of the matter is, they know through Kabbalah and, these occult practices how to, manipulate the public mind, right? They can, they can put things in your head. They know, for instance, that music is magic. They have people like Shuki Levy and Chaim Saban, who most of you will know through shows like the Power Rangers and Jason the Wheeled Warriors. I don't know how many people remember that one. That's one of the best theme songs in all of cartoons, and like those two guys are responsible for a lot of cartoons and, you know, a lot of the theme songs to kids shows, right? Like they wrote the Power Rangers theme song, Inspector Gadget, and it, like, still to this day, you can, you know, start singing one of those theme songs and, you know, half the room will, you know, perk up. Why? Because like, we connect, as human beings, we connect things to music, right? We understand the world through symbol, through rhyme and verse, okay? Like, when they put a really catchy theme song at the beginning of that show, and they give you all these cool visuals and stuff, like, as a kid, it doesn't matter if the show's any good or not. The theme song done got you revved up, and it'll trick you every time. Like, you'll think, oh man, this is going to be awesome, listen to this theme song, and then you start actually watching the show and you realize it's insane and full of globalist propaganda for, you know, everything from transhumanism to climate change, right? Like, there's all this stuff was put in our heads as kids. You know, they've been priming the pumps all this time. You know, the only thing that makes someone like me different is, like, you know, the family I come from, the fact I have, you know, people within the industry, like, that could warn me, and the fact that, like, I knew, like, so much earlier than others, like, what was going on. That's basically it. The fact of the matter is that it didn't really help me much. It actually ended up causing me to go nearly crazy and, you know, pushed a lot of my drug use and stuff. I was miserable, you know, because I didn't know what to do. Like, what do you do when you wake up as a kid one day and realize that the whole world around you is a lie and that your parents are kind of leading you into it and your school is in on it? And, you know, what do you do? What do you do when you realize that the adults really don't know what's going on? Well, a lot of us turn to, you know, addiction of many, many different types, from, you know, addiction to corn, you know, and, you know, obviously that's not, I don't mean corn, but you know, you can't say these things on YouTube, man. Right? It's just not possible without getting hammered by the algorithm. But you get my point. A lot of us started self-medicating because the system is designed to make you miserable if you wake up too early, or at all, really, but especially if you're a kid. You will be pushed out to the outside edges. You'll be made an outcast. You'll be made to feel like you're the insane one, you know, just like people do today. Like, most adults in the room will realize that, like, the crazy high school clique thing never goes away. No, it follows you all the way through work or college and work and, you know, and beyond. Like, it doesn't matter what you're doing, the schoolhouse, you know, BS never really goes away. It's always going to be a matter of tribes and cliques, right? You know, you have the cool kids, you have the stoners, you have the geeks, you have cheerleaders, like, who are attached to the jocks. Like, it's right. We all know, like, that these things exist and that, you know, they are a thing. Well, they're there in the corporate world, in the banking world, and everywhere else. You know, if you listen to the interview that Steve Bannon did with Jeff McEvery, he'll even tell you the politicians are no different than actors or musicians. They're just good at being popular. They're not very smart. They don't know what's going on. Most of your musicians don't know what's going on. Some of them do, as I've told you before. But most are just out here trying to be famous, make some money off their art, and, you know, and stay on top. They're just trying to, like, you know, have fun and unwind and all the same things regular people do, right? The thing that like, it gets them, though, is that they make friends with some of these globalists, like, you know, the aforementioned Epstein McEvery, and, you know, people like P. Diddy, and, you know, otherwise, and they get caught up, right? Like, you know, not everybody wants everyone to know that, like, they like to do drugs, you know, behind the scenes. Not everyone wants them to know that, like, they might be, you know, they might be gay, or, you know, whatever it happens to be, like, that you're hiding. It doesn't matter, right? If they know, then they can use that against you. You don't have to be, like, fully aware of the situation. You don't have to be evil, you know, fully evil. Like, you just have to be weak in the flesh, like every human is. You know, obviously others take it way beyond that, and they get into trafficking people and all kinds of stuff that's just absolutely insane. But most of them out here in the Hollyweird, like, are not, you know, they're not the evil, sinister people that, like, you know, you might think. You know, they're not all James Bond villains like Klaus Schwab. Like, most of them are just cowards, to be honest. They don't have the, you know, they don't have the courage to come out and say the kind of things that I'm saying because they have too much to lose. Right? I lost, like, everything a long time ago, you know, through my own actions. I, you know, decided to, you know, burn, like, all of my bridges. Like, that was my decision. Right? But you know, I would argue that, like, you know, things are still working out for me now, and it's because I chose that different path. I chose to turn my back on evil and all that darkness, and, you know, try to walk towards the light, as it were. And I think that's what really saved my bacon. If I hadn't done that, then there's no telling, like, how evil I would have turned out. Because I was definitely going down that route. It's just my line in the sand was way further back than some other people's, right? But, you know, back to the topic at hand, like, all of us have been propagandized from the beginning. And, you know, this idea that, oh, well, it's okay to propagandize the children as long as it's the propaganda that, like, I like, that I agree with, then it's fine. That is a Faustian bargain. Every time you end up doing that, it will come back and bite you. Every single time. There is no way to use force in order to make other people do what you want, and it still come out good in the end. What begins in blood ends in blood. And if you say, like, it's okay to do this to my neighbor because I don't like them, or I don't like the way they're doing things, or I don't like their color, or I don't like the way they dress, or whatever it may be, whatever it may be, whatever you wish upon your enemy will eventually be visited upon you. That's the rules of the game, folks. You know, be very, very careful of what evils we wish on others. Very, very careful. Like, you know, it's one thing, like, you know, for bad people to be punished. It's a completely other thing for you to, like, you know, go after your neighbor. Like, you know, just because you disagree with what they're doing. You know, we need to kind of keep our eye on the ball and make sure we go after these people up at the top that are in power that can actually hurt you and me and everyone else. Like, the fact of the matter is, like, if we don't band together, these people will win. You know, this is how Rome conquered the Germanic tribes. They used their tribal tendencies against them to keep them broke apart and weak. It wasn't until the Germanic tribes came together as, like, a group and pushed them back that, you know, they were defeated, right? Same kind of thing here. Like, if you're an American, be very, very careful what you tell the government it's okay to do. Government is like fire. It can keep you warm, but as soon as you feed it too much and turn your back on it, it will burn the whole house down with you and I in it. Right? Like, government is extremely dangerous. Philosophy of fire, people. Fire is dangerous. Water, also dangerous. Turn your back on it for a second and it will drown you. Like, these forces that we're playing with, they're not toys, right? Like, these are very powerful forces. You know, it's a very, you know, it's a very powerful magic these people are using. Kabbalah is the study of this fallen world and how like the system works, how the extreme equal opposites play off of one another. And music plays a huge part in that. Like the whole universe is music. Right? The whole universe, every planet hums at its own frequency, and they're all humming a song. Right? Same kind of thing down here on Earth with us as people. Right? Like, if we all start singing a different tune, things are going to get a bit chaotic. Just saying. Alright. Anyway, we'll end it there for today. Have a good one, folks. Much love. We'll catch you later. Peace.